Hello, and welcome to Confidently Compliant, a food safety podcast. I'm your host, Paula Parejo, and I'm from the BRCGS Americas team. For those of you who don't know BRCGS, we are a GFSI benchmark program owner who have standards in all areas of the supply chain. One of these standards is called the Gluten-Free Certification Program. Today I have with me some special guests, one from a partnered Celiac Association and a technical manager from the BRCGS team. Together, we will be discussing the importance of gluten-free trademarks on product packaging and how these small images make a big impact on consumer trust. In honor of Celiac Awareness Month, we're going to offer tips and tricks to stay safe and informed. Joining me today, I have Melissa Secord from the Canadian Celiac Association and Barry Meikle, the Technical Services Coordinator from BRCGS. Thank you all for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me, Paula.
Let's get started with defining celiac disease. What exactly is in your body and what foods are triggering for someone with celiac?
So gluten is a group of proteins present in wheat, rye, barley, and their cross-bred grains, and the damage to the intestine can lead to a variety of symptoms and result in the ability of the body to absorb nutrients such as protein, fat, carbohydrates, key vitamins and minerals, which are necessary for good health.
Wow. Melissa, can you tell me a bit about who the Canadian Celiac Association is and how your organization makes a difference with those with celiac disease?
CCA has been in existence for nearly 50 years, and it started with a few group of friends as a support group, and then they became a national registered charity. We provide support services and evidence-based information to people with celiac disease and gluten-related disorders. We advocate for improved access to safe gluten-free food, along with investing in Canadian research to help find a cure or treatments.
That's awesome. On a personal level, I certainly appreciate everything that you guys do for Canadian consumers. My cousin was recently diagnosed with celiac, and the level of praise that my aunt has given the organization is something you guys should be really proud of. The accessibility of information that the organization provides her and the openness to communication has been such a big deal to her and the family. So kudos to you for being so active with your audience.
Well, I'm so pleased that we've been able to be a resource for your family during this time.
Yeah, thank you. So, Melissa, what percentage of Canadians are knowingly diagnosed with celiac?
Well, the overall rate is 1% worldwide, but actually for Canadians, we believe that it's about 85% have still yet to be diagnosed. So they call it the celiac iceberg. There's a huge number that are walking around wondering, what is ailing them, and they don't realize that it could be celiac.
Oh, is there a particular age group in which is affected by celiac disease?
Technically, no. It can strike at any time of life, but the latest research is showing that it mostly affects switched on at the childhood years and women more often. But as I said, it can strike at any age. And right now, the average age of diagnosis is 45, and it can take up to 10 years to receive a diagnosis, which is quite typical for autoimmune diseases.
10 years. 10 years of being like uncomfortable or having something feeling off, basically.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking. But because celiac disease is common to IBS and other kind of gastric bowel issues, but it can also appear with headaches or bone-related issues, even gestational issues around reproductive, like women can have miscarriages. It's really hard to diagnose.
Wow. I definitely appreciate the insight. Many people look at gluten-free diets as just a fad, but based on your definition, this really isn't a joking matter. This is a serious condition that goes beyond discomfort or fatigue, which is what a lot of people think of when they hear quote unquote gluten intolerance. It's clearly more than that.
Right, Paula. I mean, there are people who do have gluten-related disorders, and that isn't celiac. But the research at this point is saying that they can have the same kind of damage. They can have this gluten sensitivity, but maybe not the same damage to the gut as celiac.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, a lot of people do think it's just a fad diet, and they don't actually lean in to find out maybe they've got more of a serious disease. And if it does go untreated and they don't follow that gluten-free diet, it can impact neurological issues in their with their brain, osteopenia, and even cancers of the gut. So people should just treat it like a fad diet. It is a serious condition, and they should get it checked out if they think that gluten is creating a problem for them.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for clearing the air on that. Barry, can you please tell me how we partner with the Canadian Celiac Association? What is it that we accomplish together with the gluten-free certification program?
Sure. Well, I think the most important thing is that we accomplish a trusted end product, which is the food on the shelves. Our gluten-free program is built in such a way that every product which is manufactured through it is verifiably gluten-free. The CCA, by endorsing our program, gives us a recognized and respected trademark which our customers can use on their products.
There's one thing that stood out to me in all of your definitions. It's that you're ultimately trying to guide consumers in the right direction of having safe diets. The way you all collectively do this, it seems to me, is that it starts with the production of the food and then it ends with the labels that consumers are seeing on the shelves. Is this correct?
Well, the mark certainly represents quality and consistency for our consumers. When you're newly diagnosed, we can direct people to the product, the brands, because we know then it gives them that level of trust and safety that now they can know what they can eat is safe. So it shows the consumers the product has undergone an added layer of independent third-party verification and scrutiny.
So I guess that really brings us to the main question here. Why should you care about the trademarks? And from what you're telling me, Melissa, it sounds like the core here again is to have that confidence behind what we call a trademark. Barry, why should you care about trademarks, like in terms of on a brand owner or a site's perspective?
Well, these trademarks are driving the market. If you can physically prove by use of a trademark that your product has gone through the necessary precautions to be a safe food item, this is priceless for the celiac consumer who seeks these assurances. By the very nature of their condition, a celiac diet is severely restricted already. The easier that we can make it for the celiac or the gluten intolerant consumer to consistently identify products which are suitable for them, the better. I believe the trademarks are an excellent way to achieve this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, a good thing to note as well that each of the gluten-free certification program trademarks is recognized in its own region. The CCA, obviously, with Canadians. The BRCGS trademark is a global trademark, which our customers can use internationally. And we also have one for use in the US too. This is why we encourage our brand owners to use the appropriate mark in the relevant country of sale. Between all of us, you can be recognized around the world for your gluten-free products.
That's pretty cool. I like that there's a little bit of regional segmentation. So that way, depending on which country you're from, you might be more affiliated with a specific organization like Canadian Celiac Association. But you also have the opportunity to be recognized globally. So I think it's nice to have that flexibility and it's nice to have those options.
Yeah, it's good that we have those different trademarks in the different regions. And generally, if the trademark is used appropriately in the correct location, the celiac consumer or the gluten tolerant consumer is more likely to recognize that trademark in that region. So using the right trademark in the right location is key.
Indeed, I think, just stepping in, the consumer would always like to know that that product is safe in Canada, because as they travel, they're looking for what is right in that country. So certainly for Canadians, they're looking for that Canadian mark of trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Barry, can you expand on the exact steps that are relevant for certification, just to break it down a little bit further?
Well, the first thing you should do is to learn about the program. You can do this by downloading a copy of our standard from our website. This will really ensure that you know what's involved in the certification progress and what your site will need to do before you get started. Next, you would contact one of our gluten-free certification program approved certification bodies, and you would schedule an audit with them. Again, you can search our website to search for those. And after the site has undergone the audit and received their certification, they can begin to use the trademarks.
In case you don't know, Barry's referring to the BRCGS website, which is www.brcgs.com. So on that note, I'm curious to ask you guys about this. What about self-declared products? With self-declared, do you think that they have a higher chance of misleading people? When I say self-declared, I do mean a packaged good that says gluten-free but isn't affiliated with a specific trademark. So it could have been produced in a gluten-free environment or perhaps an environment that wasn't necessarily gluten-free.
Yeah, so self-declarations are required by law to be truthful and not misleading. So the manufacturer will still need to have taken steps to ensure that their product meets the legal definition of gluten-free in the country of sale to make that claim. However, as a consumer, wouldn't you want the assurances of a trusted trademark? Wouldn't you want to know that this product has been managed at every stage of the process to control gluten? That may very well be the case for some self-declared gluten-free claims, but then again, it might not. How would you know if the trademark wasn't there?
Yeah, people, when they're celiac and they've been sick for a long time and they finally get that diagnosis, so much has been making them sick for so long. And so when you're certainly newly diagnosed, you just need that to see that confidence of certification that when they call the CCA, they say, now what do I do? We say, well, first of all, you're going to look for gluten-free items. And the easiest way to do that, that you know you're going to stay safe, that you're going to not be sick, is to look for that seal of approval from the CCA.
That's comforting. I think that's comforting to understand that with these trademarks, it really just gives you that, again, that confidence to know that it went through all the steps necessary, that it was properly read with the ingredients to ensure that this is gluten-free and it's safe for you. So I can see that. Barry, given your explanation of the certification process, I know that there's a big debate on certifying products over sites. I've seen different advertisements from different programs depending on how it's positioned. It can sound pretty great to have a specific product certified, but to me, understanding the science behind it, it also sounds like there is more room for error this way.
It's certainly possible, yes. The product certification programs generally rely solely on end product testing. So if the finished product just happens to be gluten-free, then great. It almost seems like an accident if it turns out that way. Our certified sites will be expected to conduct end product testing as well based on risk. However, given the limitations in testing, we don't feel confident that this is the best approach. Gluten's quite a tricky one, and that unless your product is a liquid, it can be very difficult to get a sample where gluten is distributed evenly throughout the entire product. This can result in test results not being as accurate as they could be if the samples are not prepared properly. We take a more holistic approach in that the whole process is geared to managing gluten at every step of the production process, not just in the finished product. Because by that time, if something has gone wrong, it's too late.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we were to create an example, let's say that you had a bag of gluten-free cookies. Because it's not a liquid, it might not be distributed as evenly. So, one cookie could be totally safe, but then the next cookie, oh, this has a higher amount of gluten than it should have. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
It's certainly possible. Yeah, it's unlikely to have you're unlikely to have one cookie that will be safe and one cookie that's not. It's not quite as distinct as that. It may be within the cookie you might take one bite, and that would be okay. But the next bite, gluten can tend to accumulate and create what we call hotspots, usually at a very very micro level. So it's very easy to create those hotspots, and if the sample isn't prepared properly, then that is more likely to happen. Yeah.
I would like to chime in. There's a recent study that the association has helped fund, and it's been a Canadian international study that people are still getting glutened. It was called the doggy bag study. So people may be consuming low levels of gluten in some of the products. So for us, knowing that the brands have taken this extra step in the certification, if people were to mainly consume those certified products, it just, again, reduces that risk and keeps them healthy long term.
Wow, that sounds pretty cool. Is this study on your website?
Not yet. It's just being accepted by journals, and we'll be seeing it published probably in the coming months.
Excellent. Can't wait for it to come out. So, I wanted to spice things up a little bit with you guys with a friendly debate question. Are you guys ready?
Sure.
Go for it.
All right. With growing popularity of being informed, what is your stance on consumers using at-home gluten tester kits? Melissa, why don't we start with you?
Well, and sometimes it's not just at home. They take them to restaurants to check their food. So our Professional Advisory Council issued a statement on this, and we're not aware of any third-party independent testing that defines the accuracy of these devices. At the present time, we don't recommend that people use these devices to determine the status in their food, but we're going to continue to evaluate it. But right now, food testing is very complex, and there's really not a good sense that these can tell you whether it's truly safe or it's truly at risk.
Barry, what do you think?
So from a technical standpoint, I wouldn't recommend using these tester kits on prepackaged food products, certainly on ones which have a gluten-free trademark on them. These kits aren't cheap, so if a product states it's gluten-free, I wouldn't waste your money testing it. Like I mentioned before, gluten testing can be very tricky even for professional labs. You have to get the right test for the right type of product. There isn't just one test which can test for gluten. You have to use the right test for the right product. Most of these home test kits provide only a yes or no result to indicate whether gluten is present or not. This isn't particularly useful because, as we know, up to 20 parts per million of gluten can legally be present in a finished product.
I don't know about you guys, but if I were to take the time to buy a gluten tester kit, I would definitely be using it as like an all-inclusive kind of mechanism. I would not take the time to get specific kits for specific products. So I could see how that could possibly mislead people as well, because if they're not using the same, type of product necessarily necessary for the kit, that could probably bring a whole host of misinformation.
The gluten may actually be somewhere else in the product or on the plate even. So it's not going to give you an accurate spot. If you check this one spot on your plate, but the gluten may be somewhere else on the plate, maybe residue on the plate or somewhere else in the product. It's not homogeneous. So it's very difficult. And then as well, because Barry has said it says yes or no, you may actually be throwing out perfectly fine food because it's within the threshold.
Yeah, and good point to bring up, Melissa, as well. Even with your utensils or the plate, like I know a lot of people with celiac don't use the same toaster, for example, as the rest of their family who aren't practicing gluten-free diets. So even then, like thinking about that, it can be anywhere, really. So there's a lot of opportunity for misreadings. I'm curious to learn what someone should do if they did use one of these kits. And let's say, like you said, Melissa, they got a false positive um, of gluten while using a product with one of our trademarks. What's the best procedure to report this product?
So I think the first thing they should do is to contact the manufacturer. After that, they should contact the relevant Celiac Association, as they can then pass the consumer's concern on to us. We would then contact the site and investigate the matter with them. I would always recommend that the customer keeps the product. Don't throw it away. Freeze it if necessary. We may want to conduct our own testing on the product if we have cause for concern. It's one of the main mistakes that people make. They get what they think they've been glutened, and they throw the product away, and then they contact us a couple of days later saying, I think I've got sick from this product. Keep the product, and if the manufacturer asks that you send the product back to them, retain a sample for yourself so that we can also conduct our own independent testing on the products. There's the temptation by the manufacturer to take the entire sample away and then test it. Say, yeah, everything's fine. There's nothing to worry about. But you've got no proof that that's the case.
That's a good tip. I think that's a good thing to note, that if you suspect that perhaps there's gluten or something isn't right with a product and it has one of our trademarks on it, then keep it, freeze it if you have to, send it for testing. I think that's a very good thing to keep in mind for consumers.
Yeah, and freezing won't affect the gluten content. It won't destroy anything. So yeah, definitely freeze it if you can.
Good to know. Melissa, on that note, is there an email or web application that someone can turn to inform the Canadian Celiac Association about that kind of product?
People can start with our website, celiac.ca. We've actually got some tips as well that guide people if they become ill and following what Barry has indicated about the process and the steps to take, making sure first they're safe, and if they become ill, talk to their doctor. But they can just use our simple info@celiac.ca and report, or they can give us a call. Calling certainly will speed up the process in case there's any delay catching up with emails. We also have a special message on our incoming voicemail that if people suspect we'll say glutened, they can listen to the message and then follow the steps.
Perfect. I have a second debate question. Some companies put a trademark on products that seem like an obvious gluten-free product, something like rice or simple ice creams, for example. Does using a trademark on seemingly obvious products dilute the value of the mark? Melissa.
As we've spoken to Health Canada, the original intent was that these products that are labeled gluten-free have been specially made for the celiac diet. They're specially formulated for the gluten-free diet. So when people see, if they ever saw gluten-free on water, they would wonder whether or not all water is not gluten-free, and that does dilute and confuse the consumer.
Okay. What about you, Barry? Do you think that this concept would dilute the value of the trademark?
I don't think so. I think it does the opposite, actually, because of the complicated nature of the manufacturing process. In some processed foods, there are so many stages of the production process that a product can become contaminated with gluten. By using a trademark on inherently gluten-free foods, like the rice example or the ice cream example that you gave, it adds a level of confidence that the gluten-free consumer needs. If it didn't have the trademark on it, would they buy that product? Maybe after reading the ingredients list really carefully and deciding if that one ingredient with a really long scientific name contains gluten. If it does have a trademark, I think they'd be much more likely to buy that product because they'll have that assurance.
That's fair.
What I would say to Barry's comment is there are products that, let's say, like a potato chip, plain potato chips would be fine, but there are so many potato chips that have added seasonings, and it can get quite confusing for this consumer. So I think there's a value in packaged goods where I think something like water is inherently gluten-free. But I think when it does come to those packaged goods, Health Canada has sort of been telling us they are maybe deferring to that gluten-free label because there may be so many other variations, like there's rice, but then there's seasoned rice. Well, how do you know the difference, for the consumer?
Yeah, exactly. I think that really speaks to Barry's point, as you mentioned. The difference, I think, rice versus seasoned rice. Like if you're having seasoned rice because it's a prepackaged product with its own ingredients, perhaps the actual ingredient itself is traditionally gluten-free, but if it's produced in a space with that might have not gluten-free ingredients, then that has that opportunity for cross-contamination. So I hear you. I think that makes sense. So I think that's everything that we have for today. Melissa and Barry, are there any last notes that you'd like to add for Celiac Awareness Month?
Well, from our standpoint, if there's anyone who thinks that the gluten is making them sick, they're wondering when they, do eat bread or certain cereals, to check it out with their doctor to see if maybe it's celiac, because you don't, want to harm your body. And if you do have an autoimmune condition that is a lifelong condition, it's important to know and then get eating safely with the products and food that will keep you healthy. So that would be our messages to get diagnosed. And then if you need help, consider the Canadian Celiac Association as a science-based group that can provide you great information to get you living healthy and empower your lifelong journey with celiac.
Absolutely. I would echo exactly what Melissa says. And I would also urge any potential manufacturing sites that are interested and brand owners that are out there who want to support this demographic to become certified with the gluten-free certification program.
That's amazing. I love that. Let's support all of those who are dealing with this, and between getting the support that you need from medical professionals and getting the support that you need from brand owners and from sites doing the production, I think this is a wonderful program, and kudos to everybody involved.
Well, I would like to say thanks to those companies that do carry the seal. For us, we have a great pride in the brand. For the consumers, it gives them great confidence. And we direct people. One of the first things we tell people is to look for that seal. So we are very thankful to those companies that have invested in keeping our community safe.
Thank you so much, Melissa and Barry, for being here today. I hope that together we were able to shed some light on celiac disease and how the use of the trademark is a key tool for brand transparency. If you want to learn more about the Gluten-Free certification program, please visit our website, www.brcgs.com, or you can email us at contactus@brcgs.com for more information on this program. If you have any questions about the podcast today, you can also email us at podcasts@brcgs.com. Let's use science for a safer world, and thank you for joining us at Confidently Compliant, a food safety podcast.